Hare Krishna. I'm going to read from Srimad Bhagavatam today. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Okay, we're going to read from Canto 3, Chapter 7, Text 6. Making sure that I prepared the right class. Yes, I'm at the right place. Okay, Bhagavan, Eka, Esha, Sarva, Kshetreshu, Avastinta, Amusya, Durbhagatvam, Va, Klesha, Va, Karmabi, Kuta. Maybe I have an eye vision change happening. Okay. Bhagavaneka evaisha. Sarvakshetresh Vastita. Amusya Durbhagatvam Va. Kleshova Karma Bhikuta. Bhagavan Eka Evaisha. Sarvakshetresh Vavastita. Amusya Durbhagatvam Va. Kleshova Karma Bhikuta. Bhagavan Eka Evaisha. Sarvakshetresh Vavastita. Amusya Durbhagatvam Cha Vatvam Va. Kleshova Karma Bhikuta. Would anyone else like to read?
Bhagavan Eka Evaisha.
Bhagavan Eka Evaisha.
Sarvakshetresh Vavastita.
Sarvakshetresh Vavastita.
Amusya Durbhagatvam Va.
Amusya Durbhagatvam Va.
Kleshova Karma Bhikuta.
Kleshova Karma Bhikuta. Anyone online?
Bhagavan Eka Evaisha.
Bhagavan Eka Evaisha.
Sarvasastra Avastita.
Sarvakshetresh Vavastita.
Amisturabhagatvam Vacha.
Amusya Durbhagatvam Va.
Klesova Karma Bhikutaha.
Kleshova Karma Bhikuta.
Okay, now we'll do the word for word translation. Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
The Supreme Personality of Godhead.
Eka,
Alone.
Eva, Esha, all these. Sarva, all. Kshetreshu, in the living entities. Avashtita, situated. Amusya, of the living entities. Durbhagatvam, misfortune. Va, either. Klesha,
klesha,
miseries.
misery,
Va,
va,
or.
or,
Karma be,
karma be,
by activities.
by activity,
Kuta,
kuta,
what for.
what for?
Translation by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The Lord, as the Supersoul, is situated in every living being's heart. Why then do the living entities' activities result in misfortune and misery? Purport. The next question put forward by Vidura to Maitreya is, why are the living entities subjected to so many miseries and misfortunes in spite of the Lord's presence in their hearts as the Supersoul? The body is considered a fruitful tree, and the living entity and the Lord as Supersoul are like two birds seated in that tree. The individual soul is eating the fruit of the tree, but the Supersoul, the Lord, is witnessing the activities of the other bird. A citizen of the state may be in miseries for want of sufficient supervision by the state authority. But how can it be possible that a citizen suffers from other citizens while the chief of the state is personally present? From another point of view, it is understood that the jiva, living entity, is qualitatively one with the Lord, and thus his knowledge in the pure state of life cannot be covered by nescience, especially in the presence of the Supreme Lord. How then does the living entity become subjected to ignorance and covered by the influence of Maya? The Lord is the Father and protector of every living entity, and he is known as the Bhuttabrit, or the maintainer of the living entities. Why then should the living entity be subjected to so many sufferings and misfortunes? It should not be so, but actually we see that it happens everywhere. This question is therefore put forward by Vidura for solution. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Shtapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Mayam Dadati Svaparantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Mukam Shadarajitam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vikamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Dr. Kanchana Gorange Radhe Vrish Vishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Panchakalpata Rubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha Patitanan Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Nityanamine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharini Nirvishesha Shrivati Pashtati Desha Tarine. Okay, so the verse says, the Lord as the Supersoul is situated in every living being's heart. Why then do the living entities activities result in misfortune and misery? Okay, so I'll share few thoughts. I brought together a few notes, and it's not like I wrote a whole script, like a whole speech that I'll read. It'll just be free-flowing. So what stood out to me in this purport by Srila Prabhupada is these four, he reiterated the same question in new ways, like 4 different times. So, for example, he discusses the tree. So this is the same thing, like, you know, the translation or the verse is saying like the super soul is situated in every living being's heart. So Prabhupada expounded on that, about how the body is considered like a tree, and that the living entity and the Lord as Supersoul, or like two birds seated in that tree. So there's an analogy there of two birds sitting in the tree, and God is one bird observing the living entity. So they're together in this vehicle, which is the body's the tree. And so they're both seated in the heart, the soul and God. So there's an incarnation of God in each of our hearts. He chose to come with each of us and be observant and and supportive. So there's an incarnation of God in the heart, and he has ways of being. There's a role that the super soul, the Paramatma, plays in with each of us, with each soul that he travels around and so Prabhupada also described a citizen of the state. Why would a citizen of the state, in a healthy, in a healthy, thriving, country or city, there would be protections there, especially if the leader was there, the chief of state was there. There would be like, either guards or police, like everything would be under control. At least people, you would think that with the personally present chief of state, that the citizen would be taken care of, because there's usually law and order with a healthy leader. So this is the example. Obviously, we have to mention that because there's anyway, we're in Kali Yuga. It's not necessarily true that just because the chief of state is present, everything's in under order. People are doing protests and speaking out, but anyway, this is another example of the citizen of the state should be taken care of, and why would there be any distress in that with the presence of the leader? And then another, this is not a metaphor, but this is just a further, like, Prabhupada's just restating this in multiple ways. The next, he says, from another point of view, it is understood that the jiva living entity is qualitatively one with the Lord, and thus his knowledge in the pure state of life cannot be covered by nescience, especially in the presence of the Lord. So how then, he didn't say the word so in the purport, but how then does the living entity become subjected to ignorance and covered by the influence of Maya? So it's like Prabhupada just looking at it from another angle, like the soul is in a pure state, and especially if it's in the presence of the Lord, how could it be covered by nescience? Because the Lord is so powerful, and he's probably sure the Prabhupada's willing to pose questions from new angles, and I feel like this purport is encouraging us to keep like questioning and inquiring. And the next example he gives is the Lord is the father and protector of every living entity, and he is known as Bhuta Brit, or the maintainer of living entities. Why then should the living entity be subjected to so many sufferings and misfortunes? So if the Lord is playing the role of father, but how come he's allowing so much misery and misfortunes to happen to the soul in the material world? If he's there and he's a protector and he's the maintainer and he loves the soul, why is he just observing in the role of Paramatma? So I would like to speak about the actual question, but first I just wanted to acknowledge those four restatements of this, like, new angles and metaphors. That there's three metaphors and one new angle to the question. Prabhupada's saying, yeah, how come, like, and I it reminded me of a Prabhupada story, a Prabhupada memory that I heard from from a YouTube video of a disciple of Srila Prabhupada. His name is Madhu Dvisa Prabhu. And I really liked his innocence and humility and just joy in that Prabhupada memory. That he has like a 30 minutes of memories on YouTube, and maybe I can share that somewhere if everyone's interested. But he was selected to travel from, I think, in India to Kenya with Srila Prabhupada, just the two of them.
To Kenya.
Yeah, Nairobi, I believe. Yeah. And so they were actually delivering deities. And he was describing how, Prabhupada wasn't, there were big deities, so Madhu Devisa was bringing the deities onto the plane, so he'd had to go from customs all the way to the plane and then go all the way back and get the second deity. I think it was Radha and Krishna. So Radha and Krishna, anyway, so he finally got back and he sat down, and then Prabhupada said, so are you ready to fight? I wrote a couple of quotes from Prabhupada because I went and listened to it because it was fun. And he said, Madhu Devisa had no idea what was happening. Like, oh, what do you mean, Prabhupada? He said, we are Vaishnavas and we must be ready to fight. At least this, I don't know if this is the exact quote, but this is how Madhu Devisa shares it, and I believe it's accurate. And so he said, I'll be the Vaishnav, you be the Mayavadi. And then they debated, and Madhu Devisa was totally defeated because he thought that it was because the Vaishnava philosophy was defeating the Mayavadi philosophy. He thought that was what happened. But then they switched roles, and Srila Prabhupada was like, okay, now, you be the Vaishnava and I'll be the Mayavadi, and let's debate. And then actually Srila Prabhupada again defeated Madhu Devisa, playing the role of the Vaishnava. Madhu Devisa thought I've got this, I know something about Vaishnava philosophy, I might have a chance this is more comfortable for me because he studied the Vaishnava philosophy. But then Prabhupada totally defeated him again because Prabhupada said, this is quoting Madhu Devisa, this is how expert you must become in your preaching. You must be able to take the position of your opponent and know his position so thoroughly that you can defeat your own philosophy with his philosophy. So to be able to defeat your own self. So Prabhupada obviously was able to transcendentally see things from multiple angles, even from the opposites or the contradictory philosophies to the Vaishnava philosophy. So that just came to mind because Prabhupada was really going into it in the purport, how come, why, and you could look at it from this angle, look at it from this angle, and I believe he wanted us to be able to study, really study and be philosophical, and be able to ask questions, have critical thinking, be able to debate, be able to look at things from multiple angles. So that's the first thing that stood out to me. And then as far as the actual topic, why are the living entities activities resulting in misfortune and misery when the Supersoul, when God is present with us and he loves us and he's our protector and our maintainer, why are we experiencing different miseries? And so, I could just stay with the fact that the question was posed, but I thought I would just speak about that actual topic, even though there will be responses from Maitreya to Vidura. There will be responses in the rest of this chapter, but I'll just share on the topic for our own sake to discuss. So what came to mind is that the living entity is in illusion. And the living entity got itself into the situation of having become conditioned, having been attracted by material energy, wanting to not be in devotion to God. And so God didn't just throw the souls into the abyss without any ability to come back to the Lord. Krishna sent the souls, but with support. So like an observer, like the observer Paramatma there, like Krishna is coming personally as a friend, but he's not interfering. I mean, he can interfere if he wants to, but the point is he's allowing the soul to fulfill its desires and to try to see what it's like to be distant from God and to be in the material world and not put God in the center and not maintain that relationship, that close relationship that was designed by Krishna with each soul. So Krishna gives each soul free will, and that's much more pleasing to him to give the soul free will to go and do as they wish. And if they choose that, though, there's a it's not like it's actually a little bit of a co-creation, because it's not, there's like this influence of Maya. So there's this additional thing, like, okay, you want to forget your eternal relationship with me, and then we'll there's like some different illusory energy so I'll read something here. So the illusory energy has two phases of existence, namely the covering influence and the throwing influence. By the throwing influence, the illusory energy throws the living entities into the darkness of ignorance, and by the covering energy, she covers the eyes of men with a poor fund of knowledge about the existence of the Supreme Person. And I have a few other quotes too. Nature is acting, and that was from the purport of Srimad Bhagavatam 2:934. So that's Srila Prabhupada's words. And then I have another little quote here. Nature is acting upon us in two ways. Just like somebody may think that here is a nice movement, Krishna conscious movement. Let me take part in this. And nature dictates, why shall you go there? Don't go there. Better enjoy like this. This is the throwing energy, throws him from the path. And another is covering energy. Covering energy means a person or living entity may remain in the most abominable condition, and still he thinks he's happy. He's happy. This is from a lecture, Prabhupada speaking. Just like you have seen many friends in the disease condition on the bed, and if you go to see him, how are you feeling? And he'll say, yes, I'm all right. He is on the disease condition. What is the meaning of this? All right. This is also covering energy. So anyone however, a dog in such abominable condition, still he's joyful. He thinks, I'm very happy. A hog, any animal. We are human beings. We are given better facilities of life. The animals are not given so much facilities by nature, but still they feel happy. If they say, of course, straight, somebody may be sorry, but this is nature's law. So anyway, I'm not following that, but so however abominable condition it may be, one feels that he's happy. So so the soul is choosing to redirect its focus from the eternal natural relationship with God to its own self, its own gratification, the material energy. It's very allured by material energy, and Krishna allows that to happen, and he uses Maya, the throwing and the covering energy, to keep the soul there as long as they want to. So it's a little bit of, it's interesting to me, the whole like Maya thing. But I'm thinking about it because Krishna is the controller of everything. And so he ultimately, even though it's interesting, the free will and the supreme controller, like I'm not really sure, but there's some sort of co-creation or interrelated powers. The soul has some power, but really it's not it can't I don't know what I'm saying. I'm just thinking like the soul won't be happy ultimately by turning its back to God. And I'm going to go to the bird analogy because I have something on my phone about it. Hold on a moment. In Bhagavad Gita 2:22, Prabhupada describes about this bird analogy. And he says the Vedas, like the Mundaka Upanishad, as well as the Shvetashvatara Upanishad, compare the soul and the supersoul to two friendly birds sitting in the same tree. One of the birds, the individual atomic soul, is eating the fruit of the tree, and the other bird, Krishna, is simply watching his friend. Of these two birds, although they are the same in quality, one is captivated by the fruits of the material tree, while the other is simply witnessing the activities of his friend. Krishna is the witnessing bird and Arjuna is the eating bird. Although they are friends, one is still the master and the other is the servant. Forgetfulness of this relationship of the atomic soul by the atomic soul is the cause of one's changing his position from one tree to another or from one body to another. The jiva soul is struggling very hard on the tree of the material body, but as soon as he agrees to accept the other bird as the supreme spiritual master, as Arjuna agreed to do by voluntary surrender unto Krishna for instruction, the subordinate bird immediately becomes free from all lamentations. So I don't know where I have it written, but so the essential, it's interesting because there it says that the soul can become free, but free from lamentation, not necessarily free from misfortune and miseries. So the misfortune and miseries are just going to be in the material world. And that's not something that we can escape. My notes are distracting me, sorry. So I'm gonna like kind of turn those away. So I'm just like having trouble focusing, but yes. No.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Finish checking these things here. So what did I just say? I feel like I'm losing my focus. Oh, so in that quote, Srila Prabhupada says that once we surrender to Krishna, that we can become free of all lamentations. And I don't know where, I'm not going to search through my notes, but there's another place that I read, and I can find that quote later, that that the soul who surrenders to God is also free of anxieties. So there's a level of liberation that we can achieve while in the body, in the situation, which is to be liberated like internally, like from lamentation and anxieties, and have internal peace through the surrender process. That doesn't mean that misfortunes and miseries aren't going to come because of the material context. I'm thinking of Naveen Krishna's phrase, be Dodd and the triple A's. Do you remember this?
Triple A's.
Be Dodd and the triple A's.
Be Dodd, yeah, birth, death, old age, disease.
And the triple A's are, actually, I think I have them. Is it Adhyatmika,
Adhyatmika.
Adhibhotika,
Bhati.
and Adhidaitika?
Adhyatmika, 3 A's, right?
So the triple A's are sources of material misery, which are disturbances from the mind and body, one's own mind and body, disturbances from other living entities, and then disturbances from nature or natural disturbances. So this is just the situation that we got ourselves in, and Krishna is not responsible for that. He's actually, I will read something. I will read a quote. This is a verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 11, Text 20. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, in his feature of eternal time, is present in the material world and is neutral towards everyone. No one is his ally, and no one is his enemy. Within the jurisdiction of the time element, everyone enjoys or suffers the results of his own karma or fruitive activities. So when the wind blows, small particles of dust fly in the air. So according to one's particular karma, one suffers or enjoys. And in this purport, Prabhupada explains that as soon as they, meaning the living entities, as soon as they declare the independence of the supreme controller, they are immediately put into this material world to try their luck freely as far as possible. And multiple times in this purport, Prabhupada is saying that people are suffering or enjoying according to their own karma. So the living entity is experiencing miseries and misfortunes to different levels depending on their karma. and depending on what's due to them. And they also are enjoying and having, positive experiences based on their karma as well. And the Lord is not impartial. He's not interfering and making everything fair and even in every soul. That he loves everyone equally, but he's neutral. Like he is not trying to like pamper certain souls or make it harder unnecessarily. People are only suffering and enjoying according to their karma. So that's very individual, and people accumulate the good or bad karma. And then we can become free of our karma. We can sort of hand our karma over to Krishna when we surrender to him and follow his instructions, follow the spiritual master's instructions. We can change the situation. We may still have karma sent to us, and then Krishna kind of takes charge of our karma at that point, and he can lighten it depending. Really, actually, he can also make it heavier, all for self-realization purposes. So Krishna might actually be more hands-on with the devotee, the person who's really trying to surrender to him and follow him. But in other cases, there's just like the soul sort of on a machine going through the results of actions, positive, negative. It's just getting its due results. And then when we turn and face the Lord, when we aren't so allured by material energy, and we start to inquire about our original nature and ask questions and actually start to practice devotional service and return to our natural state, I think there's some adjustments and changes that Krishna and the spiritual master create with the soul to help the soul with self-realization. It doesn't even mean that there's no miseries or misfortunes. It's just there's a new element of helping the soul experience self-realization. And so there's some magic going on behind the scenes we're not always aware of. But I think about like how can we hear better from the super soul? I think there's communication and guidance coming, and there's an intuition is supplied by the super soul or by God. I don't really know where it's supplied, but it's a form of Krishna. And so there's intuition and guidance coming. It's not necessarily only from internal. There's also external circumstances. People, there's a super soul in each living entity, and there could be, like my husband recently communicated something. It felt like it came straight from super soul. He had a suggestion for me, and I was like that's changing my whole direction of my life. And it wasn't like he was the best listener, or like he's so great or anything. No offense, but it wasn't like he was always just throwing out a truth bomb about me and my life, like, oh, every day, like he's guiding me. No, it was just like came through a super soul expression. So and arrangements, like life can be arranged. It's not necessarily like someone speaks to you from super soul. It could just be like between the spiritual master and Krishna. Whoever the actors are at play, I guess there's probably multiple actors, but there's the supreme guide, Krishna, who's like, arranging things and orchestrating things for the soul to help, wake up. Could be through pain, or it could be through inspiration, could be external or internal, but there is a role that God plays. And then, but the incarnation of Super Soul Paramatma, it's mostly observing and listening, although it is helping mostly it's helping to fulfill the desire. So like, okay, whatever you desire, the soul is getting what they deserve and what they desire based on karma. And so even if you're not, okay, I'm thinking like if you're mixed, like you're trying to practice devotional service, but you're not pure yet. Like I'm wondering the interplay of like, okay, you're on the machine of material energy and there's this karma going for you, and how much is there like influence and intervention from Krishna for the practicing devotee. I don't know how that works, what the interplay is. I think ultimately Krishna is in charge. So anyway, someone can correct me, but I do think Krishna takes complete control. I don't really know how, I guess it depends on the level of surrender.
Mm.
Anyway.
Yeah, Prabhupada said for the sincere devotee, Krishna takes direct charge. So then the devotee is under the control of the internal energy and not the machine of the external energy. Krishna might use past karma, but it's not a karmic reaction. Krishna can use past karma to to move the devotee to even greater devotion.
Yes, so you said sincere devotee. That doesn't mean pure, just
Yeah, we're
What's happening here?
there's different levels and gradations. Sincerity and purity.
anyway. I guess we don't know exactly what's happening, what level we're at, and how Krishna is using different energies, but Krishna is using material energy and spiritual energy combined to help us each soul. At the same time, giving free will and space just to be diverted, be straight off the path as one wishes. And Krishna is also in charge of remembering and forgetting. So I often think about I value self-realization. And at the same time, I'm always struck with okay, even though I value self-realization, how committed really have I been? Even though I'll say intellectually I'm yes, I want the truth to be I love when someone's having a realization. I genuinely appreciate when people are facing something and getting down to the truth of the matter and honoring the truth, and not just it could just be on a simple material level, this is my nature and I'm going to honor my nature, or I'm going to say no to the situation. It could be simple, or it could be really deeply spiritually focused. And of course that's even more incredible to hear stories of people who say, okay, that's it, I'm going to dedicate my life even more now spiritually. That's always incredible, and I genuinely love those type of things. And then at the same time, I'm so conditioned and so much in illusion myself, and I'm wow, for being so excited about self-realization and the truth to be honored in for each soul, and I really love God consciousness and waking up, the soul waking up. I'm really genuinely loving those things. Look at how conditioned I am. I'm not woken up. I'm not free of conditioning. And I don't know exactly kind of where I was going at with that point. Oh, that Krishna, it's a gradual process. That's what I'm trying to get to. There's really we can't control the self-realization process because it's a co-creation with Krishna, and he's actually sort of helping play a part in the story of the soul going down and waking back up. And there's that quote. I don't have it memorized, but it's work like everything depends on you, and pray like everything depends on God. So we do need to do our part. We don't need to be passive, I have no control over anything, and I just have to wait until Krishna sends me a realization or helps me helps send me something to illuminate the situation. But I'm just gonna play a passive role, and that's not appropriate. To be passive about self-realization. We need to do our part, but we also can't rush it. We can't force I'm gonna I'm gonna go to I'm gonna go to every single advanced seminar wherever they are in the world, and I'm gonna just work really hard on personal growth or facing things. And I think I have leaned into that a little bit, and at least in the past I was really illuminated and appreciating personal growth, and but there was no God in the picture, and so it was all on me, and I thought it was that I should be facing hundreds of hours of healing. And it was like not really spiritual at all, but I did think like, oh, in reality, for all that I was like hurt or emotional in childhood, and I never got to cry and finish all the emotional release processes that Krishna did design us with emotional release processes. I just had a concept that like, oh, there's probably hundreds of hours of like healing, and I would just be working on it for the rest of my life. It's not a bad idea. I think it's still relatively good to allow healing. But with the Maha Mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. With the Maha Mantra, there's incredible potency to heal the soul and to help with the self-realization process. In fact, it's more powerful than the emotional release processes that Krishna built in. Those are there and help the body and help the soul to release the stresses that we have accumulated. I do think those should be honored and in childhood and throughout life. But that only pertains to one lifetime. And like, I'm just talking about healing. We just have accumulated so many lifetimes of conditioning and karma from past lives that it's like, it's too much. It's too much for the soul to take it upon themselves to be completely pure and healed without the support of Krishna. And so he does offer us mercy when we surrender. It's like a creation together with Krishna, how we are liberated from material conditioning. And so we have to do our part, but we pray like everything depends on God, because that is the eternal nature of the soul, is to be solely focused on Krishna. Like the soul in its original natural eternal state is to be in complete devotion to our source, to the absolute truth, and that takes form. And with God has personhood, so there's a person there, and we can be devoted to our creator, and that's the natural state. And so there's something magical that happens when we surrender. And we just can't really force it either. It's actually a gift given to us. Like, okay, like I've struggled, but I don't know. I guess I'm sort of perplexed, and I have questions like, how much is there give and take between surrender and self-realization? Like, and I think that quote perfectly fits. Like, work like everything depends on you. Pray like everything depends on God. So working is like doing your part. It's activity. Praying is an internal state of mind where we're dependent on God, and we're including him, his will, his guidance, the intuition provided by God to guide the action. And the spiritual master Krishna sends another gift to us, a spiritual master, to give instructions for how to liberate oneself and return to the spiritual condition. And so there's instructions and there's guidance, and by following the spiritual master, we are greatly improving our chances that grace will come, that release of material attachment, and the reclaiming of our relationship with God. And that is through different austerities that we can do, and not necessarily we can start to refrain from material attachment and then increase spiritual activity, like for example chanting the names of God. And there's multiple ways to serve God and to practice being devoted to God, to being devoted to Krishna again, and eventually it becomes natural for the soul to serve and love God. So I don't think there's a lot more that I wanted to share. So, I'll probably end soon, but I'm just looking at the verse and purport. I think I'm complete for now, and I'll read the verse again. The Lord as the super soul is situated in every living being's heart. Why then do the living entities, activities result in misfortune and misery? Hare Krishna, thank you for listening, and I welcome any comments or questions. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Damayanti Prabhu. I appreciated your comments on this text and this verse. Hare Krishna. Yeah, from the beginning, how Prabhupada really goes into threadbare. Prabhupada uses the term threadbare. Like if there was a cloth, weave it and get into the minute threads of the opposing argument. Because Vidura is presenting the question, and like it, yeah, at least in 4 ways, including metaphors and examples. And Prabhupada says, yeah, that's a good question. Actually, we should have doubts about this. And very apropos example from Madhubisha sharing it. I haven't heard those memories. Madhubisha, I think he joined in the 60s, and I think he really did a lot to spread Prabhupada's movement in Australia, like that. It's interesting, just 3 days ago, I had an extensive conversation with someone who's now 70 years old, and he's from Kenya, Indian bodied. He met Prabhupada, probably, I think that was Prabhupada's only visit to Kenya, the one you referred to, so just interesting that he's in there. So for me, that just really accentuates something I've been attracted to from the beginning. When I saw Prabhupada's books way before I was even in theory trying to surrender, but just this really stresses philosophy, logic and philosophy, and Prabhupada, like how you emphasize, no, we should know the opposing argument. No, we should be able to make a strong case that there's nothing spiritual, we're all matter. Make a strong case opposed to personalism, and Prabhupada was just so capable to do that. We see that in this purport and the example you share. So this emphasis on logic, rationality, philosophy, nothing sentimental in the name of spirituality. Something I'm so attracted to about what Prabhupada gives us. And so, another point, and so there's that well-known verse, Bhagavad Gita, Dihinosmin yatadehe kumram yoganamjara, Tatadehantra Bhaktir Muyati. As the embodied soul continually passes in this body from childhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at the time of death. The self-realized soul is not bewildered, it is not disturbed. So Dira, so Prabhupada defines Dira as one who's not disturbed in the face of disturbances. And as you nicely illustrated, the world is always going to be full of disturbances, B-Dod, AAA, birth, death. It's always going to be disturbances. And even if we fix one disturbance, it's not disturbing anymore. But now I'm scared that the government will raise my taxes, or this person will be envious, or what about my health? Or this person insulted me. It's just like constant. And then material happiness is really defined as a relatively less disturbance today than yesterday. I guess that means I'm happy, or, well, the disturbances are just as bad, but I was just looking in my neighbor's window. He's got it worse. He's doing worse than me. So I guess that means I'm happy. It's not the positive happiness of the soul. So so that's kind of like a symptom or a gauge of the extent to which we're progressing in genuine spiritual life, that we're accepting disturbance as part of the context, and we're just not disturbed by it, and we're deeper and deeper in our enthusiasm for the actual life of the soul in devotional service. Hare Krishna.
So how disturbed are we is nice question for
Yeah,
self-realization. How disturbed are we
yeah.
by the disturbances? Not how many disturbances are there. There's not much disturbances. I must be so blessed, and look at how spiritual I am. That's not the right attitude. Or look at how much suffering I am. Krishna really loves me, so I must be so special. Like, not even that. Like,
Not that way either.
yeah. It's like, okay, it's good, it's bad. What am I focused on? Any other comments or questions? Thank you for listening. Okay. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna, Hare Bol, everybody.